The Thought Lab. Chevonne Powell.
Hi, Huntley.
Welcome to the Thought Lab podcast.
Thank you.
And
Thanks
my
for having
home.
me. Lovely. Thank you.
This is the second home of the Thought Lab podcast. The first obviously being the studio, but this was way easier for us, right?
Yes, much.
Because you're an East Rand girl.
I am, so this is great.
Sunwood
Thank
Park.
you. Yes.
Not such a far drive to Bedford View.
No, not so bad.
No.
Good. In the middle.
Yes, in the middle. Nice. So, Chevonne, you are. How long have we been trying to, or how long have I been trying to convince you to come on this podcast?
It's been a while. I have been avoiding.
Yes. Gunshot shy.
Yes, a
No,
little.
A little bit. It is, the idea of it is very, oh my God. But actually the reality of it is quite a lot of fun, I
Okay.
think.
I'm looking forward.
And we'll have quite a cool time. The reason that I first approached you and asked you to come on is because you are the founder of is it a psychologist practice?
Psychology.
Oh my gosh, that's how we're starting, eh? Psychology practice called Meaningful Minds.
Yes.
In Bedford View. And I've been going through the website and it's bloody incredible.
Thank you.
Like what you guys do. And I'm very interested I've always been very interested in psychology. It's just, I should have studied psychology and I'm probably going to end up studying psychology. It's something I'm very, very passionate about and something that I love discussing. And I've been through a little bit over the last while that I'd really like to discuss with you.
Okay.
But my last ditch attempt was Facebook. Right, I want to discuss meditation. Are there any psychologists, psychiatrists, or doctors who want to chat? And you're like, okay, fine.
I was hauled into it.
Oh, come
yes.
on. And your hubby as well was like, Chevonne
Yes.
Powell, tag in.
That's why.
Yeah.
Yes, he's been trying to get me here for a while.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
I actually visited him a while ago. We were trying to conspire to see how we could get you on the podcast.
Well, you guys both now won, so here I am.
Yes, indeed. So, part and parcel of the podcast is yes, there's topics I want to discuss, but also I'm very interested in my guests. So when I started the podcast, the whole idea was I wanted to show incredible South Africans. And that was really what it was about, right? So yes, there's things I want to discuss with you, but it's also here to showcase you because I think what you've done is incredible. I know you personally. I've read your bio and on the websites and your bio and what I know of you, it's perfect.
Okay.
It's absolutely perfect. So you obviously have this sort of deep set desire to help people. That probably stems from the fact that you're loopy yourself because there's no psychologists who aren't fucking loopy to begin with.
Yes, I agree with that.
Am I right?
Yeah, we all have to have some issues, you know.
Some issues. Yeah, there's something wrong. What should we study? Psychology. So we can work on ourselves first,
Yes.
right? But nevertheless, let's go all the way back, right?
Okay.
At what point did you realize you wanted to become a psychologist?
I suppose I was about 16 when I decided that was what I was going to study because
Wow.
I did finish school early, so I had to make a choice quite soon about what I wanted
Why
to do.
did you finish school early? Just
circumstances that seemed to happen. And
Okay.
so I kind of cut out 2 years and I had to make a decision about what I wanted to do. Mental health has always been something in my family, I think. So
Okay.
it was not something I was completely aware of, but it was always subtly around. So I suppose that got me interested in understanding it.
And straight out of school, that was it.
Yep.
Was
Finished
there
matric.
ever going to be anything else?
Veterinary science or
Ah,
something.
okay,
But yes.
equine.
Yeah,
Yes,
yes.
indeed.
But actually, my marks weren't good enough for veterinary science. No. No. So then I decided on psychology, but it was always between the two of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you finished off school and you went and studied at UJ.
First I through UNISA because I worked
Okay.
and studied for my undergrad and my honours, and then went to UJ for my master's
For
degree.
your master's degree. And you
Yeah.
got your master's in?
Oh, you're asking me. I think
Mm-hmm.
I must have been about 2011, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That I got the master's. It's a very long process to become a psychologist. So it starts.
Hell of a long process.
So that's when I finally finished, but it feels like I've been doing it for a very long time.
Well, I'm speaking to a very good friend of mine who's also been on the podcast, Mandy Arnott, and she's a psychologist and she works with kids and all the rest of it. And her and I post our podcast. We're really discussing the options of me studying psychology. And you look at the trajectory, right? And eventually I turned around to her and I said, Mandy, should I not just fucking do an MBA?
No,
you know what I mean?
It's
like,
shorter.
Okay, sure, it's a lot of work, but
Yeah.
it's 2 years.
Yeah.
And then you have this, and for my line of business, maybe an MBA is right. But for my personal, for me, for Huntley, I want to study psychology. I mean, that's really, really, really what I want to do. I'm very, very fascinated in anthropology, like
Yes.
to the nth degree. I'm fascinated with what makes human ticks and this group dynamic that we take, and the way, and I guess we will follow, and I hope we don't, but the way the states and the way the sort of Western societies now are having this big, almost the snake eating itself, right? Argument in terms of gender and equality, and it's ridiculous what's going on out there. It's and I'm just fascinated to sit back and watch all of this. It's not so prevalent in the universities in South Africa. I don't think it's as prevalent as it is in America, but
No.
I'd like to actually find out about that.
I think it's getting there. We're always a little bit behind on things. So I can see it more in the high schools, actually, in the teenagers themselves, thinking about these things in a different way than we ever have before. About things like gender inequality and what does it all mean. But definitely we're complex, and we have to look at ourselves as humans, but also as a society. And there's so much in there. So yeah,
correct. Well, I mean, I was having this discussion with somebody else during the course of the week, because if we look at what makes us up, we are part epigenetic, right? So what was given to us by our parents. So that's the first thing. And already there's issues, okay,
Yeah.
right? Then we're very much what we are the first 7 years, because that's our programming when we go through our sort of theta stage, where everything is just monkey see, monkey do. And if we're in a great environment, we typically have a greater trajectory. If we're in a worse environment, typically we have a worse trajectory. But then we are a culmination of our groups. So it will start off with, are you English? Are you Afrikaans? For argument's sake, are you Zulu? Are you Xhosa in South Africa, right? And where you grow up. And then where you grow up, location. And then what you start doing, your hobbies, your sports. I'm this guy, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, you're a horse rider. And all of these things, it's so unfucking believably complex. And then male, female.
Yes.
Yeah. Then IQ, EQ.
Yeah. Relationships and who we're with.
Absolutely. Connections.
Yes.
I mean, connections are so... I'm only now beginning to, the more I'm going into it, because despite the fact that I'm not a psychologist, I read ridiculous amounts. And I'm only now really beginning to understand how important these connections are. And how... Man, I heard a stat the other day, and I'm probably going to fuck this up. But it was something like 1 in 5 Americans... No, it was higher. It was 3 in 5... Oh, God, I'm going to fuck this up. But it was an incredible stat. It was, let's say 70 to 80% of Americans feel alone.
Yes, no. That's a huge problem.
Isn't it?
We forget that humans, we're made to be in society. We live via connection.
Tribes.
We have to be with other people, but social media particularly is isolating people, and the more we become technologically focused, the more actually isolated we're becoming, and the less able we are to be with another. They're doing so much research on the impact of children and teenagers with living in this wider society, and actually seeing that we can't communicate with one another anymore.
Yeah.
So that's making us more alone.
Skills.
And so more depressed and it's a huge problem.
And I mean, another massive problem with social media. And again, I think social media used in the right context, in the right way, in a mature way, can be exceptional. It allows me to speak to family members for my sport. It allows me to speak to everybody all over the world, because we're a sort of global community, my sport. But this whole idea, I mean, I recently posted something and I said, goal, make sure your life is better than the one you portray on social media, right? And it's this falsity, this fakery, this bullshittery. It's absolutely toxic, completely. And you're comparing yourself to people's lives that, what do you know about that person's life? And then, of course, the worst thing is we get addicted to this idea that likes equals dopamine, because it does, right? Without a doubt, this likes equals dopamine, right? And then if I have more likes, I have more dopamine. If I have less likes, I have less. And I think that whole likes thing, like when you really get into it, can literally take you down a spiral of depression.
Yes.
So I'll give you an example. When I first started the podcast, right, I was like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast. And we put everything together and we looked at all the different social media platforms that I would go out on and all the rest of it. And for the first month, I was literally looking at my phone every hour. I'd go into YouTube, how many views? I'd go into Facebook, how many views? I'd go into likes. And it was fucking ridiculous because I've never done this before. And I listened to a podcast by Jordan B. Peterson and I was just like, no, that's it. And I honestly couldn't tell you how many views I've had. I don't know how many likes I've had. I just stopped. I just don't give a fuck because I realized how toxic it is.
Because what you're really talking about is validation, and our need as human beings to be validated.
Yes.
So we now look at things very concretely, like likes and views, as a way that we're validating who we are as people, which is completely, I mean, it doesn't match, but that's how we're seeing who we are, and from just seeing if people accept us through things like social media now.
Yeah, but I think it's a communication medium that, okay, so let's go right back into our history. You know, we obviously at some point developed the ability to speak, right? And for the last however long it is, right, in my opinion, hundreds of thousands of years, I mean, that's how long it's taken us to develop speech, to develop interaction, to develop communication, to develop these multiple sets of languages. And it's taken us thousands or 100,000, does it matter? But thousands of years to develop our communication pattern. How long have we been on social media? All of 10 years? I mean, do psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors even understand?
No.
I don't think we do. I don't think that we understand the impact it's having right now.
No.
And I think only in a couple of years, it'll be a tipping point. It'll be a complete tipping point in terms of studies.
Definitely.
I mean, it has to be.
We haven't, like you're saying, we haven't had it long enough to be able to do the right studies
That's
to
my
see
point.
what the impacts are going to be.
The data hasn't been there long enough. I mean, we talk about keyboard warriors, you know, and one of the things that I'm very fortunate, I haven't had it to a large degree, although I have had it, but different types of podcasters, obviously it stems to the fact that I'm not even remotely fucking famous, because if I was famous, I'd have lots of keyboard warriors and raging and all the rest of it, right? But especially the people who are famous out there, and there's a group of individuals that are called the intellectual dark web. And it's a group of guys that have been clumped together that are really out there pushing the boundaries in terms of conversation, having hard conversations, discussing hard topics, and the rage they get is just fucking unbelievably insane. Unbelievably insane. And even that, you know, that on social media I can say things to you that I never would in real life, you know, because I mean, you can come and say, would you really say that to me if I was standing in front of you and you know, actually had to
definitely
back up? So it's this idea that I can, and we, you know, keyboard warrior for us from a jiu-jitsu point of view, just so you understand, keyboard warrior is this quintessential overweight guy, Cheetos, sitting watching an MMA fight, right? And on the computer going, oh, this guy fucking sucks. But he's never run a K in his life. You know, so that to us is a keyboard warrior. But this is what it is. This is what we have to deal with. You know, and mediums like Twitter. So Facebook's long form, Twitter's this very, very short form, right? I think Twitter's toxic. Have you been in the Twitter sphere?
No, I don't really go into Twitter much.
Man, Twitter's fucking toxic. It's literally just trolls and how much shit can I talk and what can I say and how can I put people down. It's actually got a vibe to it. If I read Twitter long enough, like it affects me. It really, really affects me. So I'm loving Instagram so much lately. Look at a photo.
Yeah, but you know, this is about people's emotions. And no matter how advanced we get, we're still primitive beings to some extent. And our emotions control us. So social media is providing us with a platform that we can be reactive and completely really emotional with our consequences.
There we go.
And that's why we have people. So it's all about your projection. So, you know, my internal anger and rage and things that are just brewing in there that I actually can't do it in a direct form. I can now go out in any form and just say what I want to say and hurt people without actually seeing it and having the consequences of it.
Yeah.
So it's all really about how we're feeling actually as a society within ourselves and unable to cope with that.
Yeah. And I mean, the perfect example example of that is road rage.
Yes.
Right? Because your amygdala hijack in a road rage situation versus your amygdala hijack face to face is completely different.
Yes.
That fuck you, you know, that type of thing. Right? And I think it's that same thing that's now on social media.
Yes.
I can just take all that anger, pent up frustration, and just direct it to people. I mean, there's literally people who troll. I mean, that's what they do.
Yeah, that's their
That's how they
purpose.
get their. That's how they get their dopamine. Yeah, their purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, frighteningly so. What do you think, and this is something that I'm really been pondering in depth, and I've only really learnt about critical thinking, seriously learnt about critical thinking in about the last I've known about critical thinking for a while. I've only applied it correctly or to a degree correctly to myself, I would say, over the last year or two of my life. So when I say thinking, I mean really critically thinking about this and trying to be completely dichotomous even if necessary. But what the hell is going on with society and this interconnectedness and this unhappiness? And I mean, I look at people whose lives I know well, who have, first of all, how's this for a stat? $34,000 per year in the States puts you in the 1%. So I did the maths, 40,000 Rand a month. I know a lot of people who earn just under or over 40,000 Rand a month. Now, you're not just in the 1%, right, of the world right now, okay? Mean income. You're in the 1% of all of history ever. Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about the lifestyles we have right now,
Yeah.
right? Toilets, houses, food on demand, heat on demand. Think of where we came from and what we had to survive as a species in terms of just getting here. We're in the 1% of the world ever. And yet we're all fucking unhappy.
We're incredibly unhappy.
I d-
We're really unhappy because
What do you think it is?
we're losing ourselves as people. We're so focused on things that we're losing who we are, and we're losing where we've come from, if I can say that. You know, everything is now focused on what we can achieve.
Yeah,
and
consumption.
Yes. And success is about what do I have. And we're so stuck in this race to prove this that we aren't actually stopping to think about what's going on within ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's why people are so unhappy. But they still think that if I have more, I'll be happy. And so
Yes.
we're stuck in a cycle.
And I'll be happy when.
Yes. And then you never get there. You never get to this time where you're not happy because you then keep moving the goalposts all the time because you're also comparing yourself, social media, to people around you. But they have a better house. Look, they went on holiday. They went to this country. I haven't done that. So when I do that, I'll be happier. And we never get to that space.
No, absolutely. I think it's also the amount of information and the access to this. Because, I mean, a couple of years ago, well, you wouldn't know.
No.
But, you know, Jane went to, I heard Jane went so-and-so. You know, now you're seeing photos instantly
Yes.
and look at my life and look at how great it is.
Yes.
And then afterwards, I'm going to go lie in my hotel room and sob because I'm actually a manic depressive.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that happens.
Yes.
Happens as well. I see a lot of people that I know on social media who portray it is blatantly fake if you know them.
Yes.
Blatantly fake. And I often say to Kirst, my fiance, I often say to her, we'll go away and afterwards I'll be like, we didn't take a fucking photo. God damn it. You know? But we're too busy living
Yes. Busy being in it.
You know, I forgot to tell somebody that I was there.
Yes.
You know, fuck it.
But that's exactly the problem, is that we're not present in our moment. We're so busy worrying about the future that we're missing out on what's happening now. And that really is the cause of the unhappiness that we're having in society. And that's why the focus for me has been about trying to get people to be more present in what they're doing. Because it doesn't actually matter what you're doing in the present. You can feel fulfilled and satisfied within that. Instead of the focus always being in the future and what you need to achieve. And that's what creates these feelings of depression and just not being enough, which is kind of the epidemic I feel that we're all under.
Absolutely. And I mean, we know that the brain gives us dopamine for reaching our short-term goals, but it most certainly doesn't give us dopamine in terms of our long-term goals, because what happens is we set up this massive goal. So I'm going to do X by Y. You work your butt off, you get it, and then it's, well, now what now?
Yeah.
Now it's finished. And then you actually have that sense of emptiness. You know, this thing that I've been working for the last however many years. I mean, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I've been training for 13 and a half years and I'm not a black belt yet.
Okay.
That's just, 2 PhDs, right? Just about. That's how hard it is. So our white belts come in and it'll take them anywhere between 12 and 24 months to get their first belt. Okay? First belt. And we call it the blue belt blues, right? And then they get their belts and then instantaneously, I've reached my goal, everything's perfect, they leave.
Yes.
not the long-term 10-year,
Yes.
the battle that's I've achieved and now I'm the man and I think I'm a blue belt in my talk, right? I think I'm the fucking man and I'm really not. And I quit.
That's, if I can say that, the problem that I find with people coming to therapy, is that we all want short-term solutions to our long-term problems. And we're a society of short-term gratification.
Absolutely.
So someone that comes to me and they want in 2 sessions to fix everything that's happened to them in their lives and to find this purpose, and it's not possible.
It's not.
Because things take time.
It's not.
And we don't have
Absolutely.
the patience. We don't want to put in the effort.
Yeah.
So these short-term things give us these feelings of goodness in the moment, but in the long term we're just continually stuck in the cycle, which is why there's so much more addiction and there's so much more prescription medication.
Yes.
And so we go to the meds because if I take a pill, maybe I feel good for 5 minutes, but I don't want to put in the effort that it would take to
do it holistically.
Yes, and then I'll be happy for the longer term.
And if you think about it this way, let's say, for argument's sake, I know you, right? And whether or not that would allow me to be comfortable enough to speak to you in a professional clinical environment, I don't know.
Okay.
And yet I know you, if you understand what I mean. So now I'm going to walk in there, and it may take, let's say you do one session an hour. A 1 hour session per week,
Yeah.
right? So I'm seeing you 4 hours, right? 4 hours a month,
Yes.
right? How long is it going to take just before I'm actually comfortable to start actually breaking down those real barriers?
Yes, exactly.
And saying things that I need to be saying, because there is power in release, man.
Yes,
There's so much power in release.
definitely.
In just getting it off your chest, all this pent up bullshit.
And I just think there's such a stigma to it,
There is, absolutely. So I'm seeing a psychologist. Wow, what's wrong with you?
Yes.
Well, let me tell you what's wrong with you. Every single person I know, I believe, needs to see some sort of counselor, some sort of psychologist,
I agree.
some sort of psychiatrist, some sort of trusted friend, right? Unless there's serious issues, to get that shit out. I think everybody should. I really, really do.
But we don't often talk to people because we are afraid of the consequences of what we say, the judgment,
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's why we try and create these spaces where you can feel safe to speak. And I don't think we really understand. People say, well, talking, what does it do? Why, talking out a problem is not necessarily going to make anything different. But they've shown research to show that our brains don't really always know the difference between our thoughts and actual actions.
Fact.
So
Yeah.
thinking about something and talking about something activates the same parts of our brain as actually doing something.
Absolutely.
So we can practice the things we're trying to achieve through talking through them or through the meditation and thinking about them. And so I think if people maybe were more aware of how we actually can create change, there'd be less stigma around why we're going to these things.
Because it's in a lot of people's minds, it's all woo-woo. And for
Yes.
me, so I consult on a lot of this and I train on a lot of this. So I'll train on addictions and how addictions actually work in our brain. So I give the full science. And the reason I do this is because if I'm sitting with a CEO, I don't have the I have to be very wary that it isn't called woo-woo. And if you're paying me for some advice, so if I'm sitting there and I'm teaching your management team, how not to have bad addictions, so habits or addictions of mediocrity versus habits and addictions of excellence, right? I need to bring that science in. The science is there. Anybody who actually knows or have researched knows the science is there. But the general people out there don't know this. They really don't. You're like, whatever you think of, and then it's all, but that's the secret. Hey, anybody's ever fucking read The Secret? Good God. Hey,
it's very abstract, and that's what you're saying, because it's easier to see, well, I have a broken leg, so I go for an x-ray and then I fix it because we can see the
steps.
Yes. But with anything in our minds, it's really difficult to see those steps, and so it kind of feels like it's all abstract and up in the air, and so people want this proof to feel like I'm going to commit to it because I can see the results.
yeah.
But often the results they should be so gradual that we change without being able to really even be aware that we're changing.
Do you think so? I think that all the work I've ever done, and I've done a lot of work on myself just to become functional because I was exceptionally dysfunctional.
Okay.
So everything in my life is just to be functional, right? I think it's all taken a shitload of work.
Oh, yes, definitely.
There's
Loads of effort.
nothing of it has been easy. You know?
No, that's not what I meant. No. Change is hard. That's why we don't do it.
Yes. I recently came across something, and maybe we can discuss it. I actually didn't plan to discuss it, but It's happened literally in the last 2 weeks. So I do temperaments training, right? So we look at the introvert, extrovert, thinker, feeler, choleric, sanguine, whatever the case may be, because it's the easiest one to do. In my opinion, the best personality traits is the big 5. Okay. I think that's the best one. But that comes with a lot of, I need a facilitator and. But from a management point of view, if I can very quickly, very easily teach you how to go, right, this person's an introvert, this person's an extrovert. The extrovert isn't necessarily windgat. The introvert isn't necessarily rude. The thinker works this way. The feeler works this way. You communicate with them in different patterns and different actions. And by and large, I find it very, very difficult, although it can be done, because I've seen people who are introverts who have eventually turned to somewhat extroverted and maybe even extroverted. But that's a lot of work over a lot of time.
Yes.
So I sat thinking to myself the other day, how is it that we can overcome, because I was doing a consulting with one of my clients, and I said to her, it's very difficult to change your temperament structure, but very easy to learn EQ, right? I think.
Okay.
And a lot easier. So your trajectory in terms of going from a true introvert to an extrovert could be 5 years.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a battle,
Yeah.
An absolute battle. Or somebody who's non-authoritative, let's say a lady in a business environment who needs to step up and start taking authority, or whatever the case may be. But learning EQ and understanding EQ, it's a far shorter trajectory. So let's say maybe 6 months, hypothetically speaking. And I was speaking to her, and then I went to another client, and I was speaking, and I said, so he said to me, have you overcome any of your temperamental disabilities? And what I mean by that is every temperament has shortcomings. Okay, I'm an extroverted feeler, I'm a sanguine, and one of my issues is very simple. I will talk for fucking ever. So I have to be exceptionally conscious about my time management, like on point, to the point where I'm almost obsessive about time. Because if I don't, I know what can happen. I know what the repercussions and the consequences of that are. And if you've got 7 back-to-back meetings,
yes, you can't
be late. I mean, you understand. Yeah. you have to be on point. So I said, how have you done that? And I sat and I thought about it, like really seriously, over the last couple of days. And I went back to him and I said, my values. Okay. And he said to me, what do you mean? So I said, so what I've done is, for argument's sake, one of my temperamental issues is because I'm a thinker, I mean a feeler, I'm prone to not want to hurt people. I'm prone to not want confrontation, right? And I'm prone to be a little bit, and I used to be a little bit of a yes man. Yes, anything to make everybody around me happy, because that's who I am. I'm a feeler, right? But that's completely detrimental to me in the long run, right? If I'm not worried about, if I'm just worried about everybody else, that's an issue. So how I overcame that is I overcame that by my value system. So let's say, for argument's sake, one of my value systems is honesty, okay? And I need to start speaking my truth, knowing my truth, living my truth. That's a hell of a statement right there, hey? Very difficult. And so I can overcome my temperamental inert want to please by going, no, it's not part of my value system. Fuck it. You are speaking an untruth. I don't agree with you. We don't have to agree, but this is my position. And what are your thoughts on that? Sorry, that was a hell of a thing. Yeah, there was a fucking hell of a thing there.
So, okay, let's talk about change. Can we change? Yes, we can change. I think that there's more and more neuropsychological studies coming out to show how much our brains can change. Absolutely. If, like you're saying, we put in the effort, the time, and the patience to change. We can change parts of ourselves.
Genes can be switched on and off.
Yes,
without a doubt.
We can activate different systems, and we have the power to do so, but we need the commitment and the energy, so that's the thing. But you're also talking about something really interesting, and for me that's self-care, and the ability to say no, and the ability to put boundaries, and the ability to know what we need to do that's good for us. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that in a society, we're often boxed to believe that there are certain things we should do. But we are different as people depending on our personalities, our temperaments, and how we're raised. And we need to be able to be aware of what we need in order to change the right things.
Yeah.
And that's quite a complicated process, because we have to be able to look at ourselves and know what's not working, be brave and confident enough to say, that's not good for me, and then make the change.
Sure.
So, and
most people aren't willing to do that work.
Not at all.
No. I don't think most people realize you can, let alone want to, and it's important to understand that. And how I came about this is, through a couple of things, various studies that I've been reading. The first one is the switching on of different programs, and let's call it a program and not get into the scientific terms, but it is different. Let's call it different programs that can actually be activated by doing something that you've never done before.
Yes.
Right? By, for argument's sake, meditation, which we'll get into later, which actually increases the neuroplasticity of your brain and allows you to create new neuron pathways. And again, let's call it new programs. Right? And I've watched people do this successfully and unsuccessfully. I've watched people completely change. I've watched a certain individual walk in and be the sweetest person, and 5 years later be a complete fucking tyrant. And I've watched that process happen. You know what I mean? An introverted feeler to almost an extroverted thinker, in behavior, at least, almost tyrantish. And I've watched it happen. And it's frightening, but it can also be done.
Yes, in anywhere, any direction.
Correct.
Yes.
So a couple of years ago, I forget when, we were talking amongst a group of managers, and I posed a question. And the question was, who's the most important person to us? And everybody threw out their different answers, right? My wife and this and that and all the rest of it. And I was like, no, the most important person in the world is me. Because if I'm not functional, I can't look after my fiance, I can't look after my clients, I can't do anything. And I was just like, oh wow. So here's the thing, right? If you're gonna talk the talk, you better fucking walk the walk.
Yeah.
So I went back and I was like, okay, Hans, let's have a look. Like, let's seriously have a look. If you're the most important person to yourself, well then what are you?
Yes.
And that's been a hell of a thing.
And I also think because society still tells us we shouldn't do that it's selfish and narcissistic if you're thinking about yourself. We're very confused between what is too much and what's narcissism, what's self-care.
Yes, absolutely.
So people come to me, and I'm a huge believer of self-care, and I'll be like, I can't do that because I feel guilty, and I'm not allowed to put myself first because people are going to think badly of me. But it's exactly what you're saying. If we're falling apart, we can't do anything. So you can't help anyone.
Well,
you can't be there.
Let's say part and parcel of my value system is to look after my family, right? Which include my mom and my dad, my brother, my fiance, my Great Dane, right? So that's part of my value system, right? Ergo, it would have to be the following. I need to be functional. And not just functional, but functional to the nth degree in order to make enough money to bring and look after, etc., etc., etc. If I'm not functional myself, then how can I execute my value? So it's not narcissistic. And there's a very big, I know narcissists,
yeah,
right?
There's a huge difference.
There's a huge difference. But again, I don't think people understand the term narcissist. I think it's become a very wishy-washy term. Oh, you're being such a narcissist.
Yes, used.
No, I know narcissists. And there's a very big difference between looking after myself, self-care, even being a little bit selfish to a degree. Some people call them I specialist, I. Even nothing there is a narcissist.
No.
Okay, that's completely different. And I even know of certain narcissists that borderline, I want to say, like sociopathic tendencies.
I tell people, if you're worried that you're going to become a narcissist, you're not a narcissist.
You're not a narcissist.
Yes, that's the exact thing.
That's the best thing.
So,
oh my God, am I a narcissist? You're not.
No.
Yeah.
Narcissists will never worry about if they're doing too much for themselves.
Yes.
So if you're even thinking about it, then you're fine. And that's not where it's
What a nice way to
for.
put that.
Yes.
I love that.
Simple.
Stealing that. / file save.
So, and you're talking about the value of taking care of your family, and that's where self-care comes in. So often people will say, if I have to say no to my family, to my kids, then how can that be putting them first? But saying no so that you're okay,
yes,
is putting them first. And we have to see it that way, especially parents to children. Saying no is, and I'm glad you brought it up, is so important in general, in life, in our relationships. And we think that by saying no, it means we're putting them last, or we aren't prioritizing other people. But it's actually really beneficial for them and for ourselves to be able to put in that boundary.
And it's a hell of a thing finding that no.
Yes.
A hell of a thing. So I've got an idea that what we should be doing is we should be writing a business plan, for lack of a better way of putting it, right, for our lives.
Yes.
Like literally, but the obviously the life version of the business plan for our lives, where we sit there and we write a little bit of a mission and we write a little bit of a vision. And we put in our goals, and so I mean, I've written countless business plans. So part and parcel of it is who are your key partners. So that we change to, well, who are your key friends? Who are your key family? Who can you rely on? And actually write this flipping thing, because it's the most important. It's our life.
Yes.
Like it's,
and you don't stop and think about it.
And values. What are those values? And more and more, I'm trying to play with this idea of, because I don't want to just throw a value out there and then not live it, because then I'm living a lie. I mean, could there be anything worse than living your own lie? Yeah, to be inauthentic. It's hairy though. But how do we make this completely accessible to the average everyday person on the street?
Well, you mentioned beforehand this program that we started to develop.
The self-development program. Yeah.
And this really is my whole goal. I start the program by looking at exactly what you've just said, creating a roadmap for your life, looking at what are your goals, what is it that you want to achieve in the people in your life, and then working through how do we achieve that, and how do we understand it, and what techniques do we need to use for self-care, and everything that you've just said. And I've tried to create something so that we can follow it in a informal way, but kind of set out so that we can start.
So you're giving them a bit of a framework,
yes,
and then you're guiding them throughout that process.
Yes.
Because it's funny when we talk about goal setting. Over the last while, it's end of 2018, right? So with all my clients that I'm consulting with, we're talking about, all right, what is your goal for 2019 December? Because this is the best time to be working for 2019 December goal. And what I've had is a little bit of failure to launch in a lot of these guys. And I was pushing them and pushing them and pushing them. And I said, all right, this is the deal, right? I don't care about your goals. What I want you to start doing is I want you to start writing plans. And I don't really care what the plans are. I don't care if the plans are right. I don't care if the plans are wrong. I want a plan. And that's been working. Because this whole idea of writing goals, I'll tell you why people don't write goals. They're shit scared.
Yeah. If you write it down, now you have to achieve it.
Now I have to achieve it. And this is what I've done. I've said to them, I literally give you permission, right, to fuck this up. I don't care if it's right. I don't care if it's wrong. I don't care if it takes us a month now to go through it, scratch it off, rewrite it, redo it. I'll ask you a question. You're like, oh shit, yes, let's change that. I said, and the only time we will actually set goals is in January. And I've actually had to play the psychological game with these guys, because week after week I was going back and say, right, let's look at your goals. And it's like, and for me, you must understand, that's business goals, because I'm a business consultant, right? And nothing would happen, and nothing would happen. And the moment I said that, everybody's changed. Now I'm starting to get the plans back, and now we're starting to do it. And now, so just interesting, because I'm dealing with, so let's think of the typical entrepreneur. He's not dumb by any mean or manner. He's ballsy, right? He knows what he wants. He's willing to take risks. You're not talking about the average employee type individual, and they battling.
Yes.
So imagine the average employee type, and I'm not putting anybody down. I'm just saying this is the demographic that I'm working with. So if they battling, imagine the average person.
So you're talking about the fears that we have and the anxieties we have about ourselves.
About us writing down our goals and going, oh my God, I have to commit to that now.
Yes, because now then I have to do it if I've written it down.
Yes.
I try to talk to people about imagining just creating a map. There's no point, you would never get in your car and not know where you're going. But yet that's what we do in life.
Exactly.
But there's many roads to get to somewhere where we want to go. And we can change the route that we're taking, and we can change what's going on. But as long as we have some sort of an idea of something, and then we can change all that as we go.
As it goes, yeah.
But there has to be a plan of sorts, because otherwise we're just sitting and we're riding around in a circle. And each year is the same as the last
Status
year,
quo.
and we're just stuck.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem we're all having.
I see it so much. And guys almost have, so when we're talking about data, I like looking at statistics, right? Because it's very unemotional, right? It's got nothing to do with anything, and stats are stats, especially when it comes to a business. So let's say we're looking at a sales cycle, right? And I want to look at closing ratios, and then I want to go back and I want to look at the statistics, because they don't lie. It's as simple as that. So then often my guys will turn around and go, oh no, I don't have that specific stat. So this is the human nature. It's so weird, eh? So instead of going, okay, fine, I don't have it, let's start. And in 3 months, we'll have an average. And in 6 months, we'll have a better average. And in 6 months, we'll have something. It's almost this idea, oh, I don't have it, so let's not do it.
Yeah.
And I often have to turn around to the guys and say, it doesn't matter that you don't have it, start now. Yeah, but then I can't, if you don't start now, in 12 months, you're still not going to have it.
Yes.
You know, at least if we start now in 12 months, I can start doing comparisons January to January.
So what you're really talking about is people's, I still think it's fear of starting something.
Yeah.
Because, I look at how many people will come and look at the website, for instance, give us a call, look at things, compared to the amount of people who will actually make the phone call.
Yeah, failure to launch.
And it's huge. The gap and the percentage, I mean, it must be less than 10% of people will actually make the phone call compared to how many people are looking. So we all know somewhere ahead, I need to do this.
From a business point of view, you've got a lead to sale ratio of 10%.
Yes.
Wow.
And people will come back and they'll look, but they're so afraid to start the process. And even then when they start, yes, they'll be like, okay, but let's just do it now and again. I'm not ready to completely jump in. I'm scared.
Let's date.
Yes, let's do it slow.
It's kind of first date.
Yeah, it's like that.
It's ridiculous. And you know what I also think is part and parcel of the problem is that this information is only really coming out now. So my dad, he's a very, very intelligent man who really directed me in the right ways in certain things to explore information and to question and these types of things. And a lot of what he gave me was good because it set me on my path. But a lot of the stuff I've learned, he just didn't know. So, I mean, it's not his fault that he didn't teach me, if you understand. But he just simply didn't know that it was even there. So I think, and I mean, this is why, for argument's sake, I argued with you for 3 months to come on the podcast, because it's so important to have these conversations. Just one person listen and one person comes and sees you and one person gets better. We've changed one person's life while everybody else is out doing whatever it is they're doing.
Yes.
But isn't it important?
Very. And creating excuses. That's what people are doing, So I agree with you. Just being able to, for me, it's just get one person to be able to take responsibility of their lives and want to do something and to create action is my purpose of what I like to see,
Can you give me an example? Obviously no names, completely, but of an incredible success story.
I don't know why one doesn't come to mind, but I've had so many people who have been able to change their lives. If I can look at it concretely, maybe people who have fears of things like driving, who haven't even left their houses, who
agoraphobia.
Yes, who have become so stuck and have been able to, just through practice and opening and letting go, being able to just become functional again.
Am I right in the idea that in an agoraphobic state, if I've got agoraphobia, I'm never really going to get over that fear. All I'm going to do is I'm going to learn to manage that fear till a point where the fear base becomes my normal.
Yes. So, and that's actually a lot of things with mental health in general. Things don't necessarily just go away.
Yes.
We just learn how to cope with it, techniques around it, and we actually take the power away from it. So I don't focus on trying to get an anxiety or depression to go away. I focus on let's try and train something else. Let's try and train another pathway. Let's make something else happen. Yes. And the more we give that power, then that actually just seems to
take care of itself. Yes.
If we're focusing on it, we're actually growing it.
Yes, because I think people need to learn how much power they have.
Yes.
And through whatever way, through whatever way, it doesn't matter. I mean, you take away the psychology side. You could do that through introducing a friend to horse riding. Yeah. I could do that by introducing somebody to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've got the saying that I constantly say to people, do something you suck at. Go out there and find something you suck at. It's good for your fucking ego. It switches on new programs. It creates new neural pathways. And yes, you will suck at it. But at some point, you'll become competent. And then you'll be like, holy fuck,
I should have done this ages ago.
I'm competent in this. Well, what else can I become competent at? And so for argument's sake, if you take the different spheres of my life, I'm I'm competent at business, right? Which is great. It's taken me 13 and a half years I've been in management, so I'm competent there. No, I'm not. I'd say I'm almost expert. Good. Jiu-jitsu, expert. Podcasting, I still suck. I've only been doing it for a year.
Yeah.
I've only had, this will be the, 30th podcast, right? So I'm still sucking at that a little bit, and still finding my way and having to get over all the anxieties. Listen, the first podcast I did, despite the fact that it's not live, I didn't sleep for the first 2 nights. I fucking didn't sleep because I'd made a commitment. You sit down, you do it, it goes out. Doesn't matter what happens. That was my commitment. And it's always been my commitment. And it was my commitment to myself. I didn't fucking sleep. But it's so good. And then you're like, okay, this isn't too bad.
Yes.
I'm getting good at it.
Exactly.
What else can I do? And then now I'm speaking to Whacked, who's John Flismus's management company, and he was like, dude, you should start business speaking. Yeah, okay, cool. So let's try that now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to suck at that for a while. But it's so important. But I just find that I've interviewed Chevonne. God, let me take an accurate guess so I don't lie to the people listening. I've interviewed more than 500 and maybe less than 800. That's how many people I've interviewed in my life.
Okay.
And one of the questions I always ask is, what do you do for a hobby? What is your passion? What is your interest? And the overriding answer I get is nothing.
Yes, I completely agree with that.
I go out with my friends. It's not a hobby.
Yeah. Sometimes I go to gym.
Yeah. Again, yeah.
Not.
What is it with society and just this go to work, see my friends, and especially in South Africa, hey, drink.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it is massively part of our culture, despite how toxic it is. Drink, go to work, go out. That's it. It's just the status quo.
And then when I ask people to start, because for me, hobbies and passions is part of self-care, and when I ask people to start putting in this balance in their lives, the immediate answer is no, I can't.
I don't
have time.
I don't have time.
How much time do we spend watching Netflix or TV
Exactly.
or movies?
Exactly.
Or we spend hours in this distraction instead of actually just trying to just create something and go. And that's what we're saying.
But people don't have time management skills.
No.
Right? You don't find the time, you make the time.
Yes, if it's a priority to you, you'll
make the time. Absolutely.
And you should be a priority to you. And you're talking about just going for it. And I think for myself too, I saw that I've never been a very an exercise related person.
Okay.
I was it was never something I even thought about. I didn't do it in school, and I just believed that I could never do it. And just starting the process last year of starting to get into it and motivating myself and just starting without really a plan, I couldn't believe how much change I could make in myself.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the more motivated you feel because you can see those results.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're saying. It just takes the start. And once you start, it gets easier because you can see you can do it.
Yeah.
But what often happens with people is they don't take responsibility of themselves. So I say to someone, let's try this. What's your hobby? What's your passion? I can't because of this, my environment, my partner, my family, my job. In the end of the day, we can't put control onto others or the responsibility onto others. We can't put blame onto them. In the end of the day, it's our choice. And we have, if we can just take that, then so much will change.
Yeah. And I mean, so I've played in the fitness space for a lack of a better way of putting it, for God, I don't know, since I was 20. With the jiu-jitsu and everything I've done. I mean, I first stepped on the jiu-jitsu mats at 21, but before that I'd been doing boxing and I actually see these cycles within myself. I've seen it with other people, but a little like a little guy who's a little bit fat will walk in and he's got low self-esteem and his eyes are sort of dropped and he greets you very sort of sheepishly, that type of thing. And 6 months later, he's starting to train, he's starting to become competent, he's lost a little bit of weight, he's got more self-confidence. As a result, he starts eating better. As a result, he starts drinking better. As a result, he starts training more. Now it's multi-training, so he's not just training his martial arts, but he's also training at gym. And I mean, I've had one of my jiu-jitsu guys who's lost 18 kilograms in just over a year.
That's fantastic.
18 kilograms. It's ridiculous. And I mean, he had a good self-confidence to begin with, but because of bike accidents and life and babies and all the rest of it, he got like a proper dad bod, if you understand what I mean.
Yes.
And the change in him has been absolutely incredible. And for him, it wasn't such a great change in terms of his self-confidence. But man, I've seen it time and time again. If you feel shit about yourself physically,
yes,
you will feel shit about just about everything.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yes. We're holistic. So if we're not feeling good within our bodies, it's difficult to feel confident. It's difficult to do things. It's difficult to be motivated. It all works together, because we are these holistic beings.
Yeah.
And, for me, just because you've tried and you've started something also doesn't mean that you're not going to fall back. And that's okay. Because we're working patterns, it's very easy to fall back into our automatic beforehand patterns. But it doesn't mean that now we stop. People also do that. It starts going well, and then they something happens, and then they crash.
Because there's no goal.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
But then they stop.
So let's look at it, right? God, I've done this cycle so many times, on training, off training, not jiu-jitsu. That's always been permanent. That's always been a permanent fixture, just about in my life, except for when I had a motorbike accident. But so jiu-jitsu is permanent, but I'll on training, off training, on training. So then I start training, and this is what happens, right? Life gets in the way of life.
Yes.
I get sick, right? So now I'm off for 5, 6, 7 days. Then I start getting better, but I'm not better enough yet to go back to training. And then work gets a little bit crazy. And then in that 3-week cycle, I create my new habit. And my new habit is come home, switch on Netflix, speak to Kirst, make dinner. And I start a complete new addiction pattern in that 3 weeks. 6 months later, I turn around, I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm supposed to be training.
Yeah.
Because there's no goal.
Yes.
I know where my weaknesses and my strengths lie. And I need a competition. I need an event. This person is coming on that date, and I want to do that, and I need to be ready by that. And if I don't have that, I'll just fall off. Because training isn't my passion. Jiu-jitsu is my passion. But going and being the fittest person, that is not my fucking passion whatsoever. Bored of training. I've done it for so long in my life. So that's what happens. I have to peg it to something. I have to have a goal. There has to be a purpose. And if there isn't, fuck it.
We have to have a plan.
We have to have a plan.
And then it goes back to everything we said about you need to know yourself to create your plan that suits your passions, not someone else's plan and someone else's passions and following someone else's programs. You have to do what suits you, and that's what also keeps you the most motivated.
And we can say exactly the same about diet, because I've spoken to a lot of people about diet. I don't know why so many people come to me and ask me for advice on diets, but because I'm not a nutritionist, right? But this is what I always say to them: is being a vegan good for you? Do it. Is being a carnivore good for you? Do it, because there's carnivore diets as well. Does that specific thing affect you? Leave it out. You know what I mean? It's like drinking, right? Some people can drink brandy and some people can't. Some people can drink gin and some people can't. It's the same thing. If you suck at it, just stop it, because there's no right. There's only your body.
Yes.
My gut microbiome is different. My cellular makeup is different. My height is different. My weight is different. My central nervous system is different. All of these things are completely different. So now I must turn around to you, because this is what happens, right? We get into the cult of. So I tried keto a while ago, right? And everybody's like, dude, should I try keto? I was like, no. And they're, why? Because I don't know if I like it yet. And I did it for like 3 months. I fucking hated it. It affected me negatively, just for me, right? And I stopped. Simple as that. I try not to get into the cult of, if I'm a vegan, everybody must be a fucking vegan, right?
Yeah, so take responsibility for yourself, know yourself, and do what suits you. But you're really right that we follow cults of things. So now that looks good, and look at that person. So I'm going to follow that pathway, but it doesn't work. Yeah, and then you lose motivation, and then it's not there.
Even within the ketogenic diet, right? So you know the idea behind keto.
A little bit. So I don't follow diets.
What happens is if I eat carbs, right? The carbs turn to glucose. That glucose is energy. My brain uses glucose for energy. Okay, because all we do is we eat to give our brains food. Yeah. That's basically what it is. That's why we eat. Okay, it's to keep our brain going. And the bigger, the more complex the brain, the more we need to eat. Simple. Okay. What keto does is it converts so we no longer take carbs in, which turns to glucose. We now take fat in, which turns into ketones. And those ketones is then what our brain uses for energy. Okay, so once I get into a ketogenic state, right, now I'm burning fat, so I'm using my fat as an energy source. Okay, it's called being in the ketogenic state. Even when you're in ketogenesis, different people kick into ketogenics differently.
Different time,
So this person does it through doing that. I mean, you can take a husband and a wife, and both of them can eat exactly the same thing, exactly the same one, and one will be higher in ketosis than the other, which proves that even there's different. I mean, you can get into ketosis purely by fasting. And I do probably 3 days a week, I do intermittent fasting. Yeah, just quickly, no food, your body turns around and goes, oh, okay, I'll use your fat.
So, but you're saying that I could never fast. It does not work for me. And I know that. So I don't get into these situations.
Why do you say that?
I say that because it makes me unhappy. fasting for me doesn't work for me. I lost a lot of weight. I think I lost about 12 kgs last year, and I did it through a diet that suited who I am.
There we go.
And suited what made me happy. I get very unhappy when I don't.
Do you get
food.
hangry?
Very. It's
really.
I have to eat.
That's amazing.
I eat every 3 hours. If I don't eat every 3 hours,
Really?
I can get headaches. I can actually feel my brain stop functioning.
Why? Because it's used to glucose.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, because there is a scientific explanation.
Yes, of course.
I mean, when I first started it, it was very, very difficult with me because again, we get taught this lie. This lie is as follows: wake up, have breakfast. Let's look at the name there. Break your fast.
Yes, break your fast. Yeah.
Okay, so we have breakfast, then we have lunch, then we have dinner, then sometimes we have snacks. So that's 4 meals a day. Okay. Do you think our ancestors had that?
No, of course not.
Yeah, I'll run around all day looking for food, and then eventually I might or might not find the food,
yes.
and then I'll bring it back, I'll prepare it, and we'll eat at night. And I mean, that's just, and when I look back at the anthropology of that, I was like, yeah, fuck that. That makes perfect sense to me. I'm going to try this. And in the beginning, exactly the same. Low energy, headaches, unclarity of mind. Seriously, like a little bit of a fogginess. And now I can get up in the morning, and so this is my deal with myself when I do intermittent fasting. If I'm hungry, I eat. I listen to my body. So if I decide to fast today and at 5 o'clock, at 12 o'clock I'm hungry, then I eat. Because basically my idea is to try and intermittent fast throughout the entire week. Okay. So if I'm on 3 times and I'm off 2, who really cares? Okay. But often 5 o'clock, I'll have my first meal. No issues, no nothing. It doesn't bother me. 5 o'clock, I'll go right through to 5. I've got no issues because I've trained myself.
Yeah, sure.
My body knows, oh, okay, he's not feeding me. I'll hit the fat reserves now.
I hear you.
Interesting.
It's not going to convince me of my, but I hear you.
No, it's just interesting.
Yes,
though,
no, it is.
Because I had exactly the same thing. It's just that, again, I think it all comes down to, and we got, let's take this full circle and take it back to everything we've just said. I think it all comes down to the idea of the cult of the media of, you need to do this, you need to be on social media, you need to try this. Everybody's telling us what we can and can't do. When if we actually go and look at the information, we can do fucking anything. We are so incredible. We are so powerful. I mean, we have the most complex circuitry right up in our brain cells. It's fucking ridiculous. I think we can do anything.
I agree. I think if we really want to and we put our minds to it, we really can.
Yeah.
Our brains have that ability, which is amazing, no matter how old we are, to relearn.
Yes.
And to grow and to change, and we have that.
This whole idea that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, I think it's absolute bullshit.
And more and more research is showing that.
Yeah.
Our brain has the ability to create change. Obviously, it's easier as kids, but we still have that ability as we get older.
Well, because the programming is newer.
Yes, and the brain is more moldable at that point.
That's it. The older, absolutely, and we'll get onto something now, but the older you are, the more fixed and rigid that program is. So the more our neural net has wired together and now is firing together. So let's talk about overcoming those types of programming and what I think what's worked for me, and we can discuss it, and you can advise me because you're the psychologist, I'm not, right? But a massive thing for me, a couple of things. First one we've touched on is do something you suck at. So do something you've never done before that you know you're going to suck at, because I think that's so good for you, right? The second thing is, just like I train my body, I need to train my mind.
Yes.
And I'm doing that, and I found that the best way to do that for me is meditation. And I've been meditating for about solidly now. Okay, solidly. Obviously, every now and again I miss, because I try and meditate at least 5 times a day, 5 times a week, at minimum. I don't always achieve that, but that's my goal. And I'm up to 30-minute meditation now.
That's impressive.
So yeah, so even if I was doing 10 at 5 minutes, now I'm doing, I'm doing massively more than that. And I know it works for me. I know the science is there. Tell me what you think.
I think meditation is fabulous. For me, what it means to me is being able to be present. So my whole goal with everybody is to connect within oneself.
Okay.
So meditation does that through. So I'm more into mindfulness, but meditation is part of mindfulness, correct?
Yes.
And
Do you want to discuss the differences between those two, in your opinion?
in my opinion, meditation is just a technique of mindfulness. Okay. So mindfulness is also a way of being through every day, through everything we're doing. It's just being able to be present in ourselves, in where we're at, to be grounded, to not to be completely future related and completely past related. Where then meditation helps mindfulness, because then you creating that time to be within yourself, to be within your mind. And there's so many different types of meditation, but to just be able to connect back with yourself.
Sure.
And that creates, we know there's so much science around what it does, but it creates calm, and it just creates that connection, and then more control over oneself and ability to do different things.
Yeah. So, and definitely increases the neuroplasticity of your brain.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
It does.
And I found, so I had an interesting series of connections, right? So let's talk about my people pleasing, which was an issue, right? And is it to a degree still? Yes. Am I infinitely better? Yes, right? But what I would do is, for whatever reason, my program was, when I shower in the morning, as I get into the shower, my program starts, and the program is, I should have said this, I should have said that, I should have done this, what about this, this person's irritating me, that person's irritating me, and there was a whole loop, and that would start the negativity spiral, because that's already how I was starting my day. And then I was like, after the meditation, that completely changed, because I'd get into the shower, and the moment that program started, I'd shut it off, or at least I would be conscious and present enough to recognize it and go, what are you doing?
Yes.
And then you get that phone call from somebody, from one of your clients, while you're busy driving, and that program starts again. And I'm like, oh, no. And, God, let's be serious. Am I successful all of the time? No,
of course
but
not.
I'm successful infinitely more than I was. Because, and this is what I'm saying to a lot of people, the moments I say meditation, everybody's like, oh, woo-woo. That's fucking what they think, right? And I'm like, you're willing to train your body.
Yes.
But you're not willing to train your mind, your subconscious brain, right? So Freud called it your id. It could be your ego. Buddhists call it your drunken monkey, right? There's multiple different descriptions of this. But your subconscious brain basically fucking controls you. Just as simple as that. And it gives you all these files, right? Here I have this and here I have that. So I think about it this way, right? Let's say, for argument's sake, you're sitting on your couch, and you turn around and you say, I'm going to go and run for the first time. From that point, and you've got about 5 seconds, within those 5 seconds, your subconscious brain is going to give you every single reason not to, because your subconscious brain is addicted to you going, I'm watching Netflix. That's the program you've given it, right? And it'll go, what about this? You can't. You'll get raped. This will happen. That will happen. You're too old. Your joints. And it'll give you all these files, and then you're like, oh, yeah, I can't run. And then your subconscious goes, I win.
Yes.
Status quo. But then you go for your walk. You overcome that programming. You go for your walk, and you do it again, and you do it again, and then the addiction and the program changes. And now all of a sudden you sit down and you're like, stop being lazy. Go for a walk.
Yeah.
And that's the game we play.
It is. And I say to people, to keep it simple, what do you want to strengthen? And do that. So the thing you're doing is what you're strengthening. So if you're sitting doing nothing, you're strengthening sitting doing nothing. If you're going out walking, that's what you're strengthening. So what we're practicing is
what we're strengthening.
Is what we're strengthening. So if you want to do something, think about it and then strengthen it. Because that's what you're saying through neural pathways. Practicing neural pathways is exactly what you're saying. But whatever we do the most is what gets stronger. And we need to be conscious that that's what you're saying. And mindfulness and meditation helps that process, because we're in our present. So if I'm in my present, I can say, I understand what I'm feeling. I understand what's happening. So I can make a conscious decision too. Instead of just being reactive.
That is literally exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
So let me tell you an interesting story how this happened. 6 months ago, I had my first... So first of all, my brother suffers from anxiety, okay, which is really weird because he's a musician. Okay, and just think of that, what he has to overcome all the time.
Yeah.
And so he had his first anxiety attack a couple of years ago, and what happened is he came up to me and he said to me, Hans, I need to do something about this. So I said to him, okay, in that stage, what I knew and what I could give was the following, right? Let's train. Let's get some dopamine in you, and let's do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does two things. It gives you physical dopamine, but it also, not mental dopamine, but it also creates new pathways, because you're constantly learning new techniques all the time. You're integrating those techniques. It's a very complex sport, very complex. It's chess, but with your body, almost, right? So he said, let's train. So he came up to me and he said to me, all right, we had mats right here, where we're sitting right now, we would have our jiu-jitsu mats, and I would start training him. We would train. And then what happens is he'd go off training and he'd come back to me and he'd go, I need to train. Because as long as I train, my anxiety is manageable. The moment I stop, my anxiety comes back, right? And so we started playing all these games, almost just testing the waters, because I didn't know what I was doing. I'm not a fucking psychologist, but I knew it couldn't be bad for him, right?
Yeah.
So we started playing these games. So I was very aware of anxiety. And then I also have very severe cases of not manic depression, but very severe depression in my family as well, that I've lived with sort of my whole life. So I'm very sensitive to depression and I'm very sensitive to anxiety, despite the fact that a lot of people believe anxiety doesn't exist. Big problem, right? So 6 months ago, I had my first anxiety attack.
Okay.
Bad, debilitating anxiety attack. While it was happening, it was one evening, I was lying in bed at about 2:00 in the morning. I realized what was happening, and the only reason I realized is because I'd been through it with my brother so much. We discussed it and all the rest of it, and he's in turn helped other people in the club who have suffered from anxiety. So I knew what was happening, and I managed to stop it. Okay, because a lot of people liken having anxiety attack to dying.
Yes,
you feel like you're dying, and I had that, but I managed to stop it. Okay, or at least I don't know if the right word is control it. That wasn't the issue. The issue was the following 3 weeks, which was a complete cluster fuck of terribleness. I'd literally get to one of my clients, like sit there, psych myself up, put my big girl panties in, walk in, give them my hour of consulting, walk out and be like, oh my God, I'm fucked. And eventually, about 3.5 weeks later, on a Wednesday afternoon, I was like, I'm done. I cannot actually function like this. I can't continue. I wasn't sleeping. I was in fucking hell. And I mean, 38 years old, I managed stress like a machine. Every single time I've had stress, I've just managed it. But obviously, breaking points.
Yes.
For whatever reason, and a culmination of, and it doesn't matter, breaking point. And I sat down, I went to the spa up the road, I went and bought myself an A4 book, which I've still got, and I sat down and I wrote myself a program. It's like, I'm fixing this now. And number one on the program was meditation. That was the first thing, because I knew all the science behind it. I just wasn't practicing it, but I had to practice it. I needed to fix myself. And we can talk about a couple of the steps, but the first step is meditation. And my idea was meditate for as long as you can, as quick as you can, because it's all about time. Right? If you think about it, it's the time in the gym, the time on the mats, the time spent consulting, everything's about time, right? So if I could get to 15 minutes quicker, get to 15 minutes, right? Because 5 sessions of 5 minutes and 5 sessions of 30 minutes, infinitely different. So I started meditating. That was followed by, and I've called this whole program that I've done priming. Okay, because I'm priming myself for my morning. That was followed by forgiveness. And I sat down and I wrote a whole forgiveness list that I really needed to do, right? And then so post meditation, so now I see it this way. I'm calming my mind, I'm controlling my subconscious brain, I'm getting into a space where I'm present, and then I forgive, right? And then after my forgiveness list, so it's static and active. Static is my list, active is consciously thinking about somebody, something, someone that needs to be forgiven. From there, I'd go into my gratefulness list. And then again, active and static, or active and passive, the active people that I'm, and things and whatever the case may be that I'm grateful for. And then active, what else in the rest of the environment. And then finish off with, and the program's a lot bigger than that now, but I'm just going to give you the core, and then finish off with permission slips. So what I'm giving myself permission to do. So for argument's sake, I'm giving myself permission to stand up for myself, live my values, be more conscious, whatever the case may be. And that program, and I've done it for the last 6 months, it's a lot more in depth than that, and I've given it to a lot of people to do that I consult with, has completely changed my life. Completely. But I think the fundamental kicker in everything there, and remember what I'm doing there is I'm trying to be present, trying to not think future, trying to not think past. I'm trying that, my whole goal for that is be present. Yes. And what's interesting is eventually people on my forgiveness list started moving to my gratefulness list, right? Because they're teaching me the right lessons. Okay.
Yeah, because if you can be present to something, we don't bear grudges then, because we start to understand and we start to learn and we start to make meaning. And if we can do that, then we can let certain things go. It doesn't ever mean that we condone things, but we can understand it and through that make meaning. So being present is all of that. And everything that you're saying is about connecting with yourself, because that's what you were doing. You were connecting with who you are, what's happening in your mind, taking a pause and looking at things, and through that strengthening that, and it becomes easier and easier to do, and you can get deeper and deeper then into what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. And then I had an interesting experience with a friend of mine who's a psychologist. She said she wanted to do hypnotherapy with me. So I said, fuck yeah, I'm up for that. Of course I'm up for that. So let's do hypnotherapy. Not a believer, right? Definitely not. I don't believe in states of hypnosis, the way that people do it for entertainment.
Yes,
I don't believe in that, right? I think it's utter bullshit. Just purely don't believe in it. But hypnotherapy was a hell of a thing, and she gave me some really interesting. So she did it to me, but she also did it for me in the fact that I was very conscious of what it was she was doing to me, and fuck, it worked. It was absolutely incredible. And so afterwards she said, right, there's the steps. This is how you do it. This is how you start. This is how you breathe. This is how you...
Because you can get yourself into that space.
Absolutely, because you can 100% get yourself into that space. Then I took that information and added that to the beginning of my meditation. Because the problem is, how do you go from an awakened state to fuck, that's difficult. Yes. Because God, sometimes I'll sit there for 5 minutes and my thoughts are just everywhere. And I'm like, shut up, come back. Yes, and depending on which strain of or which practice of meditation you use, there's different methodologies and all the rest of it. Fucking works.
But it's really hard to meditate, and that's why people give up.
So, but this is what I say to people: how long did it take you to walk?
Yeah.
And is everybody walking around on all fours? No, everybody's walking. Fucking 100%. Yes, it's going to be hard. Do something you suck at.
But that's the thing with everything.
The greatest thing is, I mean, I've got many apps that I've tried. Many apps that I've tried. But one of the best I've found, because it's free, and I don't want people to have to pay for it.
Agree.
I mean, there's really good ones that you can go and pay for, is called Insight Timer.
Okay.
So that's it there, Insight Timer.
Okay.
Brilliant. And it's got a 10-day course, which teaches you, it's guided. And I'm like, start tomorrow, day one, go. That's it.
And that's what
it's just as simple as that.
I actually added to that program because of that exact thing you're saying. So I'm also not going to just say, meditate or be mindful, but people are going to ask me how.
How?
So I've also created those sort of things where there's a guided meditation to let you learn how to get within yourself.
Yes.
Because you have to go through that process of understanding it, and then it also becomes automatic.
Yeah.
So, and then you can do it easier. Yeah. And it and like you're saying, it becomes...
You know what's interesting though? A lot of people... So there's two strains of people, I believe, now in the world. God, I may be wrong, but who meditate. Those who do so because they understand the spiritual requirements. So for argument's sake, and I'm not talking about Buddhists, I'm talking about Westerners who have adopted meditation, okay? But there's people who do it from a spiritual point of view. So I meditate because I understand it from a spiritual point of view, and there are those who are understanding the science behind it. There are a lot of people out there who are doing it from a spiritual point of view. And there's only one guy I know who's doing it from a psychological point of view, and he's a guy by the name of Sam Harris, and he's actually got an app called Waking Up.
Okay.
And so what's interesting is, yes, he's doing it from a science point of view, but he's also very, very, very spiritual. But it's for you. It's interesting because a lot of people would go, no, I don't want to do the Buddhist one because it's woo-woo, but I'm willing to do the Chevonne Powell one because it's more sciencey because you're a psychologist. And there may be something in that for you. I'm just throwing it out there because I know when I speak to my friends, a lot of them I say to them, listen to this meditation, and then I'll throw them one that's a little bit more spiritual in its approach. And they're like, no, I don't like it.
Yeah.
No, I don't like it. Whereas then I give them something that's a little bit more science-based.
Yes.
And that's cool for me.
We could convince ourselves that that's more acceptable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Either way, regardless of the trajectory. So there's definitely maybe something in that for you. And everything's coming down to apps, eh?
Yeah, no.
And that's...
But, bringing it back to, as you're talking about the anxiety and depression, everything is pointing to the fact that these sorts of things, being able to be mindful and to meditate, is what helps to eliminate and to cope with anxiety and depression. It doesn't ever mean that you won't get anxious again.
No.
And I'm sure you know that, or that you won't feel sad again.
Yeah,
but it's about being able to be conscious of it and then manage it yourself instead of it becoming so debilitating
that it manages you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because then you get into that fear spiral like you felt, is that our brains then turn on to this problem and we just spiral the fear continually until, so it's like your example, the anxiety attack is not really the worst thing. It's the fear of it afterwards and the anxiety that then increases from that, that we actually have to. And you can imagine then for 3 weeks, you've been practicing that and strengthening that anxiety spiral.
100%.
And then it's really hard to get out of it.
So can you, I have my version of this, but I'd love to hear it from you. Can you explain what an anxiety attack is?
Physiologically?
Yes. I want the science behind it. What is it? Because a lot of people have had this and they don't even know what it is. So what is an anxiety attack? Explain it.
It is just an increase of adrenaline in our bodies.
Okay.
So you can imagine that if you're walking somewhere outside and you hear someone behind you, there are certain processes that start to come into place. So your
fight, flight.
Yes. So all those hormones come up and your body goes into that kind of I need to run mode. And it's normal because someone is coming, so I have to do something about it. So an anxiety attack is that exact same process, but it's happening in a context that doesn't need it. So when you're in a calm context, you're sitting in your bed, you're at home, but your brain has gone on to that.
It's looking for a purpose. It's looking for a reason for this to happen, but there is no reason.
There's no reason. You've created the reason in your mind
head.
through your thinking. But what's happened is you have a huge release of cortisol and adrenaline.
Okay.
And the adrenaline is creating that panic attack. So everything in your body, all your organs are kind of heightening to fight or flight, but you're sitting in your bed. So that's why it's so
I was literally in my bed.
Yes. And then you feel like you're going to die because your body is needing to run, but you're sitting still. And so it's just that fight or flight response. And that's why it sounds so simple. But if you can calm down, so if you can breathe through it, if you can think about it, you're actually then releasing other hormones and you're taking control of your nervous system and bringing it down.
So what tools and practices can you give people for when they're going through an anxiety attack?
So you want to focus on breathing always. That our ability to control our breathing is one of the utmost things to control an anxiety attack.
Absolutely.
Okay, but important, you cannot practice these things just when you have an anxiety attack.
Yeah, you need to. Yes. So you're basically saying you need to be meditating.
Yes, you need to know what does focused breathing mean? Where do you breathe from? You also can do things like focus on something to ground yourself. So focusing on a clock ticking on the wall, or focusing on a painting and looking at all the colors. So what is happening is that you can imagine your brain as having an upstairs and a downstairs. Okay. Your downstairs is your primitive brain. That's where all our emotions are living. Brain. Yes. Then the upstairs is your frontal lobes, so the thinking and processing. And the stairway between that is what connects us and integrates us. Okay. Now, when you have an anxiety attack, the stairway is collapsed. And all you have left is you're stuck on your emotional reactive brain. Then we're feeling out of control because there's no thought processes that's happening. So we want to integrate that other half of our brain. So by focusing on other things, by meditating, by breathing, you're asking your frontal lobes to come back. So by counting something, by looking at colors, you're using your thinking brain and you're creating that staircase to come back in again.
I like that example.
We even teach children this thing where you can say you flip your lid. So this is my frontal lobes and this is my reactive brain. And when I'm having a panic attack, I'm flipping. And just the process of actually looking at your hand and bringing your hand back is helping to activate the frontal lobes and bringing yourself into a calmer state.
Wow.
So it's all just this integration with your two sides.
Wow.
Very simply.
And then I've explained it as follows to people who because obviously within the club, I've got lots of students, and I've got 1 or 2 students who have suffered from anxiety, and people have come to me because I've mentioned this before on the podcast, and I say the following. So if I'm wrong, please correct me. Right? I say, once that lid has blown, meaning I've had an anxiety attack. Okay, it's almost like a tap has been switched on into a cup, into a glass, and that is never ending. It doesn't stop. So the only thing that I need to do is I need to open up another tap at the bottom so that I can regulate it. Because that's what I found. My anxiety, will it one day go away? Maybe. but it hasn't gone away. I need to regulate it. So what I'm doing is the anxiety is coming in because that tap is now broken, and all it is it's coming in all the time. And my regulating valve at the bottom is meditation, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. For me, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I don't care. For me, let me rephrase that. Dopamine, right? Training, any form of dopamine that I think you can get, and these types of practices, and that regulates it. And with the proviso that I'm doing my meditations and I'm training, I'm fine. I'm really fine. I actually don't know if I've got anxiety anymore. No, it's still there. It's still there.
But
it's definitely
it's important what you're saying, because your expectation was not that your anxiety was going to disappear.
No, just regulate it, manage it.
Yes, and that's, people come to me and they expect to go away, and then that kind of puts them back because it's still there and it's still there. But you have to learn how to regulate the thing you have. Some people are anxious people and some people are not. Yeah. Some people struggle with something else. So it's your thing, but you have to learn how to manage that. Yeah. It's never just going to disappear. Now, I'm also have struggled with anxiety and I'm quite an anxious person, and it's always going to be me. But I know what triggers it, what starts it off, and what works for me.
Triggers.
Yes. And I practice how to help myself, not just when I'm anxious. Because when we're in that state, then we can't do much. You know, if you haven't been practicing any of your techniques and now you're having an anxiety attack and you want to do something about it,
not going to work.
Your brain's too overwhelmed. But if it's already automatic, it's already there, like you're saying, you know how to meditate, it's there, it's much easier to bring it in.
And I can give you a great physical example of that. You know, so we teach self-defense techniques, okay? And a year or two ago, I used to do self-defense seminars, okay? And I stopped. I refused, because I realized that I'm actually doing more of a disservice to the ladies. Because what happens is I teach you a technique, right? You practice that technique for a couple of minutes. Now you have the idea that you can execute that technique. You fucking can't.
No.
Right? In a real life scenario, what it needs to be is muscle memory.
Yes.
So that's what a boxer has. A boxer has pure, unadulterated muscle memory, right? A guy does something, he, drops his head, drops his shoulder, jab, cross, bam. That's instinctive, it's reactive. But it's been practiced and practiced and practiced until it becomes muscle memory. So what you're saying is this is exactly the same thing. It's almost like brain memory.
Yes.
Right. I've done it over and over and over, and I know how to control that.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Because if you're in that fight or flight situation, you can't just pull up things. You can't remember that technique you learned 3 months ago.
Most people will go into well, I say flight, fight, or freeze.
Yes.
There we go. So most people will by default go into flight or freeze.
Yes.
Most people.
Yes.
By default, I think. Right? So a guy runs up to you and tries to attack you and you go, oh, fuck. And I mean, that's just, look, I've seen some ladies who go into fight mode, especially when it's expensive handbags. Right? Fucking beat guys. And that's awesome. But it's also very dangerous, right? But flight and freeze, I think, is our status quo. It's the one we know the best, especially in today's society where we're very soft, very sheltered, especially with millennials who are very weak, fragile. Let's use the words fragile, but it's fucking true.
No, it's true.
It's true. Take your dad, Chevonne. Take my dad. They both went to the army.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, big impact.
Massively. They both went through that where they got broken the fuck down, because I think every single person should go to the army or something like that.
Yes.
Broken down, built up, taught to be a man, taught what it's like to live out in the wild, be rough, fend for yourself. All these very, very important things that you actually need to survive, because if our society breaks down, we're all fucked.
I agree.
True.
Yeah,
Fucked,
very.
right? Even from, so I'm 39, I'm 38, from 45 downwards, conscription was cancelled. I think it's 43, 45. I don't, in terms of age, right? I don't remember the year, but that's gone. So what the hell do we have? We've got a bunch of weaklings fucking running around looking for safe spaces. It's fucking true.
Yeah, I agree.
It's pathetic, right? Here's a gun. There's a picture, there's a meme I saw on Facebook the other day that I absolutely loved. It's like 18-year-old storming the beach of Normandy, right? And the other one is like this little weak guy sitting there behind a computer at 18 years old.
Yeah.
Well, that's the difference.
I think that people are saying that now we're too emotional as a society, and I don't think that is correct, because I think it's important for us to be emotional and understand our emotions, but we haven't balanced it out. We've just gone to this extreme
of too much emotions.
And too much sheltering. And that is the problem. Parents today shelter so much that they aren't able, children aren't able to fend for
Helicopter
themselves.
moms.
Incredible. It's a spoiling, sheltering society. And so I am very much for being able to teach your children emotions and understand them. But there also has to be that on the other side of I can take responsibility for myself. I know what to do and I've learned things. And we're going back to everything we're saying. What are you strengthening? What are you strengthening in your kids? What is society strengthening in this generation? And it's not strengthening things that are needed for our survival, for good family systems.
Yes,
absolutely.
And
that's
so I mean, and there's a couple of fucking phenomenal books. One of them that really got me on this route was a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth. Absolutely phenomenal. And she went out to understand why it is that people who go to Harvard University, I think it was, and West Point, which is the biggest naval academy in the States, why they drop out. What's the difference? And it's this grit, this idea of building grit in your kids. So I mean, it's such a phenomenal book that I think every parent should read. But what can parents do to balance the idea of teaching emotion? Because I do believe that's important, because I think we did come, especially the last 50 years, from a very male orientated, hierarchical dominant and oppressive.
Yeah, feelings were not something we talk about or feel.
Absolutely. Okay, so there's that as an extreme. Then let's say there's present day as an extreme, which is too much emotion, snowflakes, fucking every other adjective you can find that's out there at the moment, which I love looking at, right? How do we find that balance? How do I, as a parent, create somebody who's well integrated, who's well balanced, who understands emotions, but also understands when I need to MTFU?
Parents need to be able to let their children fail.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
That's, for me.
You just became my new best friend.
They need to make mistakes. They need to hurt. They need to be upset. They need to go through all the real hard challenges of life.
Yes.
You can't just shelter your children that they have this wonderful, happy existence and then go into the real world and don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So I always talk to parents about scaffolding. So you must imagine that every year you're taking a bit away from them, and they need to be more on their own, problem solve by themselves, be able to, you can facilitate and guide, but you're not there to solve the problems, stop the mistakes from happening and stop the failures from happening. I look at how many parents are involved in the school in a way that they're, not allowing punishments, not allowing consequences, not allowing
eighth place medals.
Yes. There's a reason these things are there, and it's okay if your child feels disappointed. Then you sit with the disappointment and you talk about the disappointment. That. Yes, but we don't try and avoid the fact that the child needs to have disappointment.
Absolutely.
So make mistakes and fail.
I mean, I sat last night at my grading, so I had 40 kids at my jiu-jitsu grading, and you must understand what that is, man. That's 40 kids who'll go through hell and will become well-integrated human beings one day, and I love it. I mean, that's the future, right? And I said to everybody, is everybody excited? And they were like, yes. I said, is everybody nervous? And they're like, yes. I'm like, good. It's good to be nervous. It's absolutely good to be nervous, because you need those nerves. You need to have a little bit of failure and have a little bit of disappointment. I couldn't agree more. I think you've literally hit the nail on the head there. There is instances where there is this helicopter mom scenario gets taken to its nth degree, and its nth degree is as follows. I'm for argument's sake, a single mom, and I have a son, right? And this is the deal we're going to make with one another. You are going to want for nothing. I'm going to look after you. I'm going to shelter you. I'm going to give you everything you need, right? The deal is you will stay with me forever. How toxic is that?
Very.
And I mean, how terrible is that for that person?
Yes.
And I'm just giving you an example. I'm just giving you a scenario.
It's like they become stuck and never grow up.
Never grow up. Never take accountability. No. Can't be integrated, can't be functioning. Terrible.
And it's sad because it's coming from the mother's projections and the mother's fears and the mother's
insecurities.
And you're molding your children into a space where they can't ever be alone and be able to fend for themselves. And I often ask parents, I say to them, especially parents of teenagers, I say, if worst case scenario had to happen and you had to pass away, can your child manage?
Survive. Yeah, what a fucking great question.
And they really can't. Teens of today cannot manage if their parents weren't there.
Yeah.
So you're doing your children a disservice. You want to create adults who, if something had to happen and they had to be on their own, they can function, they know how. That's what we want trying to create.
I couldn't agree more.
but that's not what's happening.
No.
There's also a guilt, I think, because parents are often working and busy.
Yes.
They say, I've heard parents say, I just want my child to do well in school. So they don't have to do chores, they don't have to do anything, just do well in school, and I'll take care of everything else. That they don't give emotionally to them because they're really busy and stressed, but they're giving materially and they're protecting them. And it's just a disaster.
But I mean, what a fucking backwards way of thinking, because if you go back let's go back to let's say, for argument's sake, okay, because we're white, right? So we from Europe, regardless of which way we look at it, we're from Europe, okay? And Europe typically has fucking harsh winters. If you go back in our history, it was typically fraught with wars and malnutrition. And I mean, in England you have serfs, right? In the Scandinavian countries you had the Vikings. I mean, we come from some fucked up turbulent times. Let's think about it, right? Do you think you had the most emotionally stable parents back then? No, you didn't, right? So this idea that, well, because I can't see my kid for 8 hours because society predicts that I need to work, and it really does, because fucking shit's expensive.
Yeah, no, it's
right?
hard to live.
And right now, I know very few people who can survive on one salary.
Yeah, agreed.
It takes the couple. Okay, so we're out there, and as a result, we get this, a home, a house, so I don't see my kid for 8 hours. That's fucking okay. Because we're still part of, again, coming back to that 1%. I bet you every single one of your friends is part of that 1%. Or at least as a family,
Yes.
cumulatively, right? 20 and 20 are form part of that 1% of society ever, in the history of ever. Like, I think we need to cut ourselves some fucking slack.
Yeah.
And just
Agreed.
be like, okay, we're doing okay.
Yeah.
You know, big picture versus this little microcosm. I think the easiest thing to do is, I think we don't understand our history well enough.
Oh, no, we don't. We're just focused on
Now.
what's going on.
I mean, like, if you look at where we came from, it's ridiculous.
And I think also there's a lot of guilt that's always surrounding that. Guilt that we have something. It's so conflictual that people will feel guilty that they have, instead of feeling proud of the fact that they've achieved.
Yeah.
And so
Guilty that they have, and simultaneously not happy that they don't have more.
Yes,
Like,
I
what
know.
a fucking dichotomous idea.
because I'm still looking at the other person who has more, and I still wish I
Yes.
had that.
Yes.
And then if we look back to parenting, so then I feel guilty, so then I'm just going to overcompensate to give you the short,
Helicopter.
Yes. Instead of just saying, this is the way life is. It's tough sometimes, but when I'm with you, I'm going to guide you as much as I can.
That's it.
So
Yeah. I have to work. I work so it gives us this. Do you like this? So you can go to jiu-jitsu, so you can go to soccer. And I think this idea that we don't, I don't want to mention names, but I've got one of my best friends. He's got 2 beautiful daughters, man. And you must see how he speaks to them like they're grown-ups. Like, he makes deals with them. You know what I mean? Okay, this is what I'm willing to give you for this. This is why I'm doing this. And it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And I think that we think that our kids are stupid, and they're not fucking stupid. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to fight in front of them, but we'll go fight in the room, but you can still hear us. I mean, are you
Yes.
Are you then don't say anything about it, because it's a
Yes.
secret.
Oh, that's terrible.
As opposed to turning around to the kids and saying, look, mom and I are having a little bit of a fight right now. We adults, this is what happens. We're arguing. We still love one another.
100%. Open communication, so that you don't let children create their own assumptions of what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, open
Yes.
communication. And I believe that even from the youngest age, children have the ability to do chores, have to take responsibility for the chores that they have, and great learning. Parenting should be about teaching. It's not supposed to be about fear and discipline. It's about, what am I teaching my child every single day?
Yeah.
So when you're parenting and doing something, you need to consider, what have I just taught?
Yeah.
So if I'm allowing you to just disrespect or lie there and do nothing, well, what have I taught? And we're going back to, what are we strengthening?
Yeah, what are we
Yeah,
strengthening?
all the time.
So there's the psychologist that I'm enamored with at the moment. So I'm a little bit of a boy fan, right? His name's Jordan B. Peterson.
Okay.
And he's just written some of the most incredible books and done the most incredible lectures. And he was talking about this exact same thing with kids. And he goes, well, this is what you do with a baby, right? How to teach them how to set the table. He says, so your baby's just learning to walk, and they're just learning to hold things and that. Says, can you teach them to set a table? No. But this is what you do. You give them the plate, get them to give it back to you. That's how you start. I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. He says, literally, give them the plate, give it back, pat on the head. Next night, give them the plate, give it back, pat on the head. Next night, and then a couple of weeks later, give him the plate, let him walk with you to the table, take it. I was just like, oh, I didn't even think about that. But here's the thing: who ever teach parents how to be parents?
No one does. That is such a problem. Yes, no one does. So you go into it without knowing.
That example of setting the table, which I think is fucking phenomenal. Like, I just love the example, right? It doesn't matter how late you work. It doesn't matter what you do. You can do that
in 5 seconds.
You can do that every night as a start.
Yeah, involve your children in what you're doing. Involve them in everything that you're doing and explain it. Use words. I think parents also don't do that. They don't verbalize and use words for what's going on. So even if you're just explaining setting the table, use your words. Explain it. Even if they don't really understand.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't, because they're building on something.
Yeah.
So we're saying we know there's no time, but you're just still doing stuff. So use that time.
Yes.
Use what you have by just talking to them and modeling things.
Yeah. Fucking pop them on the side while you're cooking. This is what I'm doing. I'm cooking this. Here's a bowl of nothing.
Yes.
Mix it.
Yes.
Yeah. Or something like that.
Exactly.
Look, I mean, I've never had kids, so... And you're about to have it,
I am,
aren't
yes,
you?
Yes.
Boy or girl?
It's a girl.
Is it a girl?
Yes.
Okay. Very
Yeah,
nice.
very
Are you excited
exciting.
about that?
I am very excited.
Happy excited at the fact that it's a girl.
Yes, no, we're both
For his
excited.
sins.
Let's not talk about that. But yes, yeah. I think we're both really excited that it's a girl. It's.
What are your plans? Because obviously, I mean, we're talking about this now, right? Have you got very specific plans in terms of bringing up this child? Methodologies, not plans. I'm not talking about will she be a fucking doctor one day.
No.
I'm saying exactly what we were discussing. Strategies.
I believe in this. I believe in teaching. I believe in negotiating. I believe in always making sure that she's learning something in the process.
Yeah.
I don't believe in parenting for fear. Because I don't, what is that benefiting and what is that teaching? So I've done a lot of work with infants and a lot of work with parents. So I feel quite confident, I suppose, in where I want to go. And everything I've said to you today is what I believe in.
And absolutely. And I'm assuming at the end of the day, you now need to take your hubby and you guys need to sit down and go, well, here's the plan. Because if you are on one plan and he's on another plan, then there's a fuck up.
Yeah. I think being married to a psychologist is hard. We do a lot of talking. So I think, I've really sat down with these things with him and we talk about it all the time. And because very important what you're saying, often parents don't sit down and think about what are my parenting styles.
Yeah.
And then we're in conflict because you're doing something with what your parents did and I'm doing something with what my parents did. So we've often sat and thought, what do we agree with what our parents did and what do we want to do differently with what our parents did? And creating our own pathway about
based
how
on
we
your own
see-
personalities.
yes, and our histories and taking all into consideration.
Yeah. I mean, your baby's fortunate. She's going to have you, or not fortunate because you're fucking loopy. I'm joking, Chevonne, but you understand what I mean. I know this for a fact because I've dated girls with kids. And let me tell you, that's difficult. Holy shit, because there's a complete management style there, parenting style.
Oh, yeah.
Preset, pre-done.
Yes.
You walking into that. And holy fuck, you may not like what you see. You may not agree with what you see. What is your position? What can you do? What can't you do? Can you interfere? Can't you interfere? Holy shit.
But the problem with all of this is no one talks. So no one sits down in a couple relationship and just talks about the differences that's happening.
Yeah.
We're not aware of why we're doing anything. We don't even see that we're actually replicating most of the time either the same or completely different patterns of our parents, and we don't sit down and talk about it. So then we just react and we have behaviors and we get passive aggressive and we never communicate about what's going on.
And I mean, it's so easy for you to see the one dad who's like this. He's, for argument's sake, I mean, something that we're busy fighting with now as a generation, you and I, is racism. Because remember, in a lot of instances, this racism was given to us. I didn't ask for it.
No.
I didn't ask for my, that time, that generation to give it to me, and now I need to fight with that. But you can see that typical racist dad grow up, that typical racist son who grows up, the typical racist grandson, and that whole fucking spiral. And I'm just using that as an example, but it could be anything, that whole fucking spiral. I'm a doctor, so you need to be a doctor, so the next person must be a doctor. Well, maybe I don't fucking want to be a doctor. And I think parents put such unrealistic expectations on their kids.
Agreed.
And
you're not going to stop that unless you're self-aware. Because parents do not know what they're putting down into their children. So unless you are aware of what you're doing, you're going to keep creating these cycles. And generational cycles are very researched and very much there.
Oh, yeah.
It's and if we don't, you have to see your child as their own identity. Often we want to live through our children what we believe is right, or what we wish we had done, or what should we done differently, and we live through them.
Oh my fuck, yes, you project your...
Very much.
Holy shit, I didn't even think about that. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I didn't achieve, so they have to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been hard done by for some reason, so you need to make sure that you can do this differently.
Yeah, so my best mate JP, he's got 2 little daughters, and this morning we were busy talking about it, the differences between these 2 daughters. You know, Paige is a little bit older, and she's very athletic and almost like a bit of an older soul. You know what I mean? And we were discussing, well, what is Ava going to be? You know, the younger one, because that. We don't know yet, but they're completely different personalities. But each one of them is so unique in their own little way, you know, and each one has got their own passions. And I agree wholeheartedly with you. Man, let the kids be who they're going to be. You know, figure out who they want to be and what they want to grow and help them with their passions.
And a lot of parents think they're doing that, but they're not, because they're not aware enough in themselves to know what they're passing down and not passing
Which goes
down.
back to what we said, know yourself first.
You want to be a good parent, you need to do the work. You need to understand yourself, your triggers, your weaknesses, and your strengths, so that you can stop that progression over by just being aware of it.
Yeah. And figuring out triggers is a very difficult thing.
Yes.
Very, very, very difficult thing, because our ego, first of all, doesn't want us to.
No.
We don't want to admit it.
We don't want to change.
And we don't even want to look at it and admit that we've got faults. But it's ridiculous, because this is what I'm saying to everybody. Temperamentally, everybody has faults. It doesn't matter what the fault is. It is what it is. What matters is that we identify the fault and manage it.
Yes.
Because your temperament type and mine is prone to some faults, and yours is prone to some faults. So the idea that I don't have faults, that's ridiculous. And I don't even have inherent faults or epigenetic faults and things that are personality faults and all the rest of it. Introvert, extrovert, all of this. Everybody has issues.
And we have to accept that too. And that's
everybody.
okay.
Hard though.
Yeah.
Hard though. So I want to quickly talk about your self-development program.
Okay.
A little bit further. What is it that you're doing there? Because you also have mindfulness programs.
Well, the mindfulness is part of
the
self-development program.
Okay, what is that?
My goal was to try and help people to create change, like we're saying, strengthening pathways, and to do it in their own homes. Obviously, therapy can be expensive and time-consuming. Absolutely. So what I've tried to create is a program in which you can do it in your own home, and that's really cost-effective, but it needs a lot of effort. And what I've seen is people sign up, and they're not finishing because they don't realize the amount of effort that it's going to take. Yeah. If you want, I've done it for 8 weeks, and it's every single day. And the point of that is because if you want to change, like we're saying, you have to practice and strengthen. Yes. So you have to be able to commit to doing something every day to start strengthening and changing a pathway. My goal of it is to educate people to understand thoughts, behavior, and emotions, to create the self-awareness like we're talking about, to understand triggers, and then to know what to do with it. So I've basically created this thing of information and techniques so that you can teach yourself how to be more self-aware, how to be more present, and how to manage whichever symptoms you're dealing with, really.
Yeah. And does that... So is it a program I take home? Is there any interaction between you and your client at all?
So what happens is they get an email every day, and in the email it's the some information and some things to think about and some things to reflect on. They have access to me, so if they would like to ask a question or they have something that they're worrying about, then they can contact me directly, and we can always organize a Skype session or something like that if they want to chat
or once every 2 or 3 weeks they can come in and see you, however it is.
I do also use it as part of people who are seeing me, so they come see me once a month and then they do the program in between.
Oh, wow.
So that they are,
there's still that human interaction.
If you can only go to therapy every, like say, twice a month.
Maybe you can only afford that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are not going to get as much change if you did it every day. So if we can combine it with something like this, that every day you're doing something, but then when you come to me, we can reflect and think about it, then that's like the win-win situation of change.
I think that is such a winner idea. Such a winner idea. Have you had a lot of success with it?
It's been really great, but I'm finding it really difficult to get people to buy in. And I think it's because it's time. People see 8 weeks. They see they're going to have to do this every day, and immediately they're just like, I can't do this. I don't have the time.
Can you not break it up into 2 modules of 4 weeks, 4 weeks?
I am thinking about how to break it up, but I mustn't lose sight of my own value in this, in that I don't want a short-term fix, because short-term fixes do not work. So I don't want to give you something for 1 week.
But then what about the management of the expectation? Maybe you need to oversell it in terms of how hard it's going to be. Like oversell that it's going to be even harder than it actually is. Because I think that's the problem, is the management of expectations and people's weak will.
Yes, it's just, they're all good in the beginning, and then it's really difficult to continue. People who have finished have really found it helpful. I've had a lot of positive feedback about how it's opened up their minds to thinking, and how they've realized things that even through therapy they hadn't realized, because it's something they're doing every day. You know, I often use it to our gym example. You're going to go see a personal trainer. How often do you need to go to gym? So I'm giving you this to do in your own home, to do it as much as you can to try and strengthen that muscle.
And when I'm doing it, if I was interested in doing it, would you suggest that I do it on my own, or I do it with my fiance?
It's personal development.
Okay, so it's
but you can do it together if you want to. But the questions are very much focused on
me,
on you. So this is, it's not a couple's. But I mean, you can do it with another person and talk about the reflections that you've realized. And definitely, I mean, it's helpful. But it's very, and it's set for anyone. So
and how long does it take a day? Sorry, excuse me.
So it takes a half an hour a day.
Yeah, I can see how that would get.
Yeah, it can get, but I've also done it so that if you miss a day, it's okay. You can just you can just do it the next day.
Okay.
You know, you don't even have to do the full thing. Just take note of what is being discussed. Try and just listen and be part of it, and that already is creating change. You know, we don't always have to do 100% to create change. Even if you did 50% of
it's
something,
better than zero.
Do 2 minutes of something,
100%.
10 minutes of something.
Yeah, that's what I say to people. Do 5 minutes of meditation.
Yeah.
You don't have to do 30.
No.
I mean, my goal is in the next 4 or 5 months, I want to get to an hour.
That's really hard to do.
There's got to be a goal though.
Yes.
Otherwise, what is the fucking point?
Yeah.
I've got to be pushing the limits. So now I'm at like 30 minutes. I'm going 20, 30, 20, 30. But now the next thing's 40.
No.
That's hairy, eh?
It's very, I honestly could not do for 40 minutes. So
and you must understand, so for everybody listening, I have attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder with insomnia and dyslexia, a little bit of germophobia. Like, if there's a poster child for who couldn't do meditation, it's fucking me. Right? For years, I was like, I can't meditate. It's because I never fucking tried. I tried once, fail, and then go, you see, it's because I'm ADD. I can't meditate. Yeah, fuck right.
We can do anything.
Yeah.
There's no label that stops us from doing something.
With enough time and enough effort.
Yes.
So Chevonne, if guys want to get hold of you, you've got your Meaningful Minds website.
Yep.
Which is, give it to me, it's meaningfulminds.co.za.
Yeah, simple.
That's it. And all the information's on there.
Everything's on there.
I've been to your website. Stunning website, by the way.
Great, thank you.
Really, really nice.
So on
website.
there, there's lots of resources, things they can look at, and then they can always contact us via Facebook, email, phone call.
Facebook Meaningful Minds?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Same.
And you guys are based in Bedford View?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Well,
thanks so much for
thank
having
you very
me.
much.
It was really great to converse.
Almost 2 hours.
Jeez, okay.
Hey?
It went quick.
I told you.
Yeah.
All right,
Thanks
guys.
so much.
Thank you for coming, Chevonne.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated. So long and thanks for all the fish.
Right,
Ciao.
thanks. Bye.
All right, everybody. Sure. What a great podcast. What phenomenal information was given to us by Chevonne. I really, really enjoyed it, and I really hope you got as much meaning out of the podcast as I did. I really, really enjoyed it. As always, this episode of the show was brought to you by Jared Smith, who is my main equipment sponsor and sound engineer. And he's just done a new cover called Elation, which was done for our dearly beloved and a belated grandfather who recently passed away. So it's such a special song, and it's really amazing. You can go and check it out on YouTube. That's Jared, Jaryd Smith, Smith, and the cover's called Elation. And also to my super uber amazing nerds at BSIT for helping me get the podcast out into the ether, right, via what I can only describe it as black magic, because none of us really know how these RSS feeds work. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for listening. I've got some awesome podcasts coming up before the end of the year, so keep tuned, and until next time, ciao.